you amazing, beautiful people, and welcome back to another solo leveling cut content reaction video. I think that's what we're calling these ones. So, the amazing AniNews has just uploaded episode 7 cut content, and this one I was more excited for than the last one because I feel like episode 7 had quite a lot of like downtime. And when we have episodes like this with the downtime, that's usually when we're gonna lose stuff from like the web novels and the book, you know? So I'm kind of curious to see what stuff was missed, what stuff was left out, especially considering some of the things we have seen popping up in episode 7. I feel like this one is going to be a really good one. Also, huge shout out AniNews. They are thundering their way to 700,000 subscribers. So if you are not subscribed to AniNews, please make sure you change that. Link to their channel is in the description. And please like this video. Please subscribe here to G.O.T Extra. We're trying to get to 100,000. So press that subscribe button unless I'm into my first time ever reaction to Solo Leveling Season 2, Episode 7's cut content.
Last episode, a lot of the cut content was mainly Sung's approach to battle. Here we have entire scenes ranging from a completely different outcome with Jinho and his father, all the way to Detective Beck, the full conflict with Lee Minsung, and just a whole lot more with all the other side characters.
Yeah, see, I knew
anime
it.
clearly chooses to focus on each of the main conflicts, but what it leaves behind in exchange is the development of everything else. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing, but it does lead to episodes like these seeming a little rushed. You can tell they're pushing forward purely with the intent of getting to the next conflict. So, where unlike in other episodes there'd only be minor details and scenes the anime could go without, in today's episode there'll be a lot more substance. So I
would definitely say that is core the main thing with solo leveling. It is the fights, alright? It is the fights. It is the beautiful animated fucking fights, you know? And that is one of the awesome things. The story itself is fun and very enjoyable, and I'm liking it. But let's be real, man. The fights are why like why we're here. And I guess that is what the anime approach has been, but not so necessarily what the book approaches have been. So it's kind of nice to get these videos to sort of see both sort of like paths. Like I've said this before in the past, because I know some people get kind of defensive when it's like when we do these reactions, that sort of stuff. I'm not doing these reactions because I feel like something is missing from Solo Leveling. You guys should know this by now. I fucking love this anime. I think it's amazing. I'm having the best time watching it. I don't at all feel like anything is missing. I'm doing these videos because I love Solo Leveling so much. I want to know everything about it.
Anime could go without. In today's episode, there'll be a lot more substance. So stick around for everything the anime left out from the novel and manhwa. Episode 19, the 10th S-Rank Hunter, covering chapters 76 to 81 from the manhwa and chapters 92 to 100 from the web novel. This episode can be divided into multiple.
Random question. What is the difference between the manhwa and the web novel? Like are they a side-by-side story, or are they two separate stories?
Sections, each involving their own portions of cut content, so the first would have to be focused on Lee Minsung. The anime just glosses over who he is and what he was planning, but the novel really goes deep into his character and impact on Sung's assessment day. So, to clarify just how popular Lee Minsung was, he was often referred to as Asia's top superstar.
Okay.
An iconic actor known across the globe, making this a momentous occasion simply due to how popular he was. Like, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say cameras all over the world were focused on him today.
That is kind of curious, because, but it's kind of interesting, actually, when you think about it, because it just coincidentally, all those cameras just happened to be there on the same day Jinwoo was getting his, like, assessment announcement, you know? Seems kind of suspiciously lined up there, you know? The whole world would find out about Jinwoo the same day about him. And the other thing that's curious about all of this is the fact that in the anime, they presented people, like reporters, saying like, oh, this is a bit of a boring story. Where you think if this guy was Asia's top superstar, they wouldn't be thinking that.
It's why he was in a car with the country's top news reporter, and it's also why the media was so eager to find out more from him. They all wanted to know his plans for once he became a hunter. For Lee, this was all a calculated move on his part though, since everything from the press conference all the way to tomorrow's headline was meticulously planned with the intent of making him look good. Even the guild he signed with was chosen solely with that purpose in mind. How does joining the Reapers Guild make him look good?
Yeah.
Well, with the Reapers now just a shell of its former self, him joining painted the image he was willing to stand up for the underdogs. I had mentioned this in a couple episodes before, but the Reapers Guild always seemed to be getting the short end of the stick lately. Before, they were once the top guild in the country, but after Chairman Go orchestrated Beck's departure into his own guild, the Reapers had lost the status it once held so proudly.
Was Beck part of the Reapers
That
Guild
being
then?
the case, it was when Guildmaster Lim saw Beck and Choi fighting that he couldn't help but smile, since to him, he thought they were fighting over Lee. For once, it seemed like he wasn't losing out to them. Little did he know he was actually still 5 steps behind. That's its own separate conflict involving the guilds on a larger scale though, so to bring our focus back to Lee, he too couldn't help but smile thinking the guildmasters were fighting over him. It was enough to have him step out and begin preparations for the press conference. It was then that Sung would arrive himself, leading to a bit of confusion regarding all the commotion. What I mean is that Sung knew he could have avoided it just by using stealth or entering from the back.
Okay.
The reason he decided not to is because this was a date and time the association reserved in advance for him. He didn't feel like he should have to avoid the front just because all these reporters were here. He definitely didn't have to use the front door either, but it was just too easy to clear a path for himself. Shoving the reporters aside was no harder than moving a pillow. It was once Sung had gotten to the front that's when Lee's manager would step in to stop him.
I can't remember if AniNews said that the anime makes Sung more arrogant or the books do. Because for me, I definitely feel like maybe it's the books. I don't know. Either way, what I'm trying to say is they left out the scene of him like pushing the reporters aside and sort of like shoving his way through. At least I feel like they did to that level. I don't remember it significantly, and I feel like everything I hear of Jinwoo in the books, he's much more emotional, hot-headed, and crazy. And I would like to see a bit more of that. Because he seems so calm and like collective in a freaking story, but I would like to see a crazy Jinwoo,
This confrontation didn't go down like how we saw in the anime though, because in the novel, the manager was a lot more aggressive. As a muscular D-rank hunter himself, the manager believed this to be an opportunity to embarrass what he thought was a normal person. He would shove Sung with quite a bit of force, fully intending to knock him over and even injure him. This didn't sit too well with Sung though, since if he was just a normal person trying to make their way through, then the amount of force the manager used would have injured him for sure. He could tell from the moment the manager made contact with him. Of course, Sung didn't budge at all, so now the manager was in a pretty tough situation. Like, Sung was clearly pissed and emitting an aura that dictated not to mess with him, but at the same time, the manager's boss was right behind him. This meant he could either concede, embarrass himself, and potentially lose his job, or double down, hold the line, and risk the consequences awaiting him.
Double down, bro.
Neither were great, considering Sung's gaze was scaring the life out of him right now.
Double down,
That's
bro.
when Chairman Go would come out himself,
you
not only
lucky.
saving the manager from international embarrassment, but also reminding Lee who it was that gave him permission to have this press conference in the first place. He wasn't upset that Lee started earlier than he should have, just annoyed that he was making trouble for Sung.
That's funny. That's funny. Let's be real. You're in that situation. What you doing? And the reason I'm saying double down is because you need a job. You know, let's say you don't double down, you're gonna lose your job. Okay, so take the ass kicking from Jinwoo. Although then again, saying take an ass kicking from Jinwoo sounds like picking a fight with the sun. I feel like it's not a good idea.
This was quite the peculiar situation for the press, since the chairman rarely, if ever, greeted someone in person. Even for the employees who'd been working with him for years, not once had they ever seen Mr. Go personally receive a guest before. It didn't matter that they were powerful businessmen or high-up officials of government, the chairman would always be greeted by them, not the other way around. So, for him to be doing so now for someone so young, well, that was clearly something out of the ordinary. It made the press wonder who it was the chairman was meeting with, creating a noisy environment no longer suitable for a press conference. This obviously went to piss off Lee, since all his work was about to go up in smoke. Like, the cameras were being packed up and people leaving, so the only thing he could do to reverse it was make a statement. One that would give the press exactly what they were looking for. He knew if he shared what his future held with regards to his status as a hunter, then they were sure to stay, since that's why they were here to begin with. He just needed to start his assessment early, since to reveal his rank before that would implicate him as the manipulator he is. That's when Wu would step up to stop him, leading Lee to threaten him in a way that revealed quite a bit of information about him. As it turns out, Lee's dad was the vice chairman of Yujin Construction. The company we know
Okay.
is owned by Jinho's dad and the company that also happens to be the association's #1 sponsor. That being the case, Lee was threatening to expose the association for treating him poorly, asking if Wu and the chairman would be able to handle the fallout. Wu would simply reply with yes, fully accepting Lee's bluff for what it was. He would then stare him down with an aura far more intense in the manhwa, leading Lee to have to come up with a different plan.
Aren't they both A ranks? But I guess we've spoken about this before. Just because you're an A rank doesn't necessarily mean you're a badass. You know, it'd be like giving anyone an Iron Man suit, you know? Let's say you got 10 people in a room, you give them all an Iron Man suit. Who is going to win in a fight if they all go head to head? Well, what if I tell you that one of them is like a master engineer who also happens to be a black belt in 5 different martial arts, as well as an expert marksman and blah, 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 whereas the other 9 are all just random average Joes. Know what I'm saying? So that's exactly the same situation here. Just because they're both A ranks, if one of them has more experience, more training, more skill than the other one, and also, that's going to, you know, depending on where they are on the A rank spectrum as well, you know, because it varies. But you know what I mean.
Here the story switches over to Sung's reassessment, so to focus on what was cut from that, we first have a bit of insight on what Chairman Go was thinking. He was feeling incredibly excited since it was just recently that Wu had recounted what Sung had done for the Hunters Guild. It was a debriefing that confirmed everything he initially thought about Sung. The way he cleared the dungeon solo without asking for—
It's interesting looking at the old hunter, you know, the guy in charge of the association, because you just see him riddled with scars, and he's the only, like, old S rank we've met. It sort of gives you an idea of what kind of life they live.
Anything in return really went to highlight exactly the type of person Sung was. It showed he wasn't lying when he said he just wanted to hunt monsters here. So, if he truly didn't care about anything but fighting, then Chairman Go was ready to support Sung in every manner conceivable. It wasn't often an S-rank hunter's goal lined up perfectly with the purpose of the association. Of course, Mr. Go still wished he could bring Sung in, but he knew doing so would just be a waste. He was well aware Sung's powers were way too strong to keep outside the dungeon. Now, aside from the fact—
So it almost sounds like he's weighing up, because let's say they bring Jinwoo in, then they've wasted Jinwoo's abilities. You know, he's not going to properly use his abilities. He's never going to be in these situations where it's worth him, you know, it's just pointless. You know, be taking like the fastest horse in the world and just putting it in a shed. You know what I mean? And that's what he realizes. He's like, it's just a bad idea doing this to Jinwoo. So is he coming up with like a backup plan, which is like, okay, Jinwoo doesn't want to join any of these guilds. Jinwoo just wants to hunt and fight. I like this. Maybe there's a way he can be in the Hunters Association without being in the Hunters Association, you know? Like a middle ground.
Choi and Beck were waiting here for an hour, Sung's reassessment consisted of one shadow only. Well, in the manhwa he summoned everyone, but in the novel he kept it limited to his weakest soldier. He didn't want to overwhelm the examiner with the intense pressure some of his more powerful soldiers emitted. That's when Sung would declare he could summon 100 more of them, leading the chairman to think it was 100 more of these soldiers only. With this being at most the equivalent of a B-rank hunter, that went to significantly reduce the full assessment of Sung's power here. Sure, it still made him more powerful than the entire combat force of many large guilds currently out there, but that was assuming every one of his summons was only as strong as this soldier. It didn't take into account anyone else. So, Sung's power was still quite the mystery, but what—
You kind of forget one thing as well, don't you? And that's his own strength and his own abilities. And obviously, so does everyone else, which we even saw in the anime, because they don't expect a summoner, a necromancer, to be able to have the skills that Sung Jinwoo has.
What the examiner saw was enough to classify him as a mage-type hunter. The events after the assessment were pretty much the same, except when Beck had warned Sung not to leave, Sung assumed it was him implying that he would regret it. He thought they were referencing the massive offer he was leaving behind, not the sea of press waiting for him on the outside. It was a scene where his reaction in the manhwa was actually pretty funny. As for how the press ended up like this, well, that takes us to a scene from 10 minutes prior. While Sung was showcasing his abilities to the examiner, Lee was saving face making the announcement we saw in the anime. He dropped the bomb that he was retiring and made clear regardless of his rank, he would fully commit to being a hunter. This was to make it seem like he cared about his people and his country, but what it really was a lie to divert attention from those complaining he was avoiding his mandatory military service. As is required for every adult male in South Korea, Lee was using his father's status to avoid what would normally be 2 years of conscription.
Okay.
So, where before the media was spotlighting something obviously terrible for his brand, this was the perfect way to reverse it. By retiring from acting and joining the Reapers Guild, not only did it make it seem like he was descending the summit.
Random question. If they do join, like, hunters guilds, or they become hunters and they start fighting, do they still have to do their, like, military conscription in the solo leveling universe?
Just to protect the people, but it also came with a whole lot of money and the reputation of being the Reaper Guild's most famous hunter. So, to Lee, this was a win-win-win for him. He was essentially achieving a lifetime guarantee against criticism. It was right at the climax of his reveal, though, that reporters' phones would start to ring one after the other. They were all receiving the news of the country's 10th S rank, all while slowly piecing together it was the mystery person they saw earlier. As for how everyone found out so quickly, it turns out the Hunter Association uses a dedicated app to deliver important information in real time. Usually, the app alerted users to the location of A-rank dungeons or gates close to a dungeon break, but today the app was used to confirm Sung's status as an S-rank hunter.
Is that normal?
It was updated the moment Sung's new license was made. So, knowing Sung was on the inside, the press was now trying to rush the building, all while Lee was stuck figuring out why no one was paying attention to him anymore. He had even tried talking to the reporter who was previously creating headlines for him, but all eyes were focused on Sung now. So that was the full extent of Lee's involvement here. It makes sense why the anime decided not to include everything about him, but if they did, it would have just served to add to the excitement. All he is—
I do feel like it's not needed. You know, like I always feel like whenever you get these like extra bits of information, you can see why it's like, okay, it's not 100% needed, because all of this just adds to the story, the fledging, makes it kind of like funny and silly and that sort of stuff. But I don't know, are we going to see this character again, or is all of this just for this like one moment? Like, does he come back, you know?
Is a foil to contrast with Sung's character. A point that was still made clear with the abridged version we got in the anime.
Yeah.
Now, the next major cut content comes in the form of Jinho's conversation with his father, because not only did the anime leave several important parts of it out, it also chose to adapt it differently. What I mean is that the outcome of this conversation wasn't the same as what we saw here. To start it from the very beginning though, it was right as they were about to start discussing Sung that Mr. Yu would receive the news about Sung himself. A phone call would leave him looking genuinely surprised, after which he would put on the news for Jinho to see. On it was a Sung looking very clearly annoyed. Though his face was visibly emotionless, Jinho had been around Sung long enough to know what his expressions really meant. What went to shock Jinho the most though was the news that Sung was an S rank. Remember, Jinho only knew Sung was great. He didn't know that Sung was S rank great. So, to see that this was what Sung's true power was, well, that was as much a shock to him as it was to everyone else. He was also incredibly proud that this was a person he got to fight alongside with. Now, I don't know why the anime decided not to include the real reason why Sung didn't join Jinho's guild, but it's more than just wanting to fight to become stronger. Some of you may consider this a spoiler, but if we're
This is a spoiler? I kind of want to skip past this if it's a spoiler. Alright, we're going to cut this out. Hold on, let's skip past this. Alright, luckily AniNews left a timestamp, so cool. No spoilers, no spoilers.
It's before Jinho would reveal his intent to accept that offer, though, that Mr. Yu would first show a rare expression of content. It was a change of face so unexpected that when it did happen, it usually spoke volumes. Here it was so strange that Jinho couldn't even look at it. Why the smile then? Well, despite Jinho not being able to secure Sung into their guild, what he achieved by befriending Sung was something his father hadn't been able to do himself yet. It was an action that fully aligned with the true intent behind the Yujin Guild's creation, an important bit of context the anime never explained to us. So, why did Mr. Yu really want to create a guild? Well, it wasn't to make more money or to compete in the industry, but was instead to protect both himself and his family. In a world where hunters were growing stronger by the day, To him, it wasn't enough to rely on the rule of law or government anymore. I mean, with some hunters being as strong as an entire nation's military and others ruling like kings in certain smaller countries, it was only a matter of time before a new world order was formed. At least,
I gotta say this. If what we are saying here is in the manhwa and web novel, they made the relationship between Jinho, and his dad, like, nice. Like a good father-son relationship. It really pisses me off that the anime, like, I honestly feel like it went to the anime studio, they looked at it, and they were like, a good father-son relationship? What the fuck is this? No. We don't have that here. They hate each other. The father's work obsessed. Disappointed in the son. Boom. Rewrite. Why is it always like that in anime? Why, man? For the love of fucking God. And it's not just anime. Because people will say like it's a culture thing. Bollocks. It's in like American movies as well. The amount of American movies. Think about all the movies you've seen. How many times do you see like a fucking father who's like obsessed with work? Oh, sorry, son, I missed your birthday. I was too busy in the office. Crunching these numbers. Oh, so sorry. I missed your birthday again. Motherfucker, what? What? It pisses me off so much. As a father, fuck you.
Countries, it was only a matter of time
God
before
damn
a
it,
new
man.
world order was formed.
Just have normal
At least
parent
that's what it
relationships.
seemed like anyway. So, in order to get ahead of the curve before that happened, Jinho's father wanted to gather hunters he could trust. If he could put together a guild and fill it with hunters he could rely on, then that to him was the best way to protect those he cared about.
True,
For
true.
Jinho,
Very
such
smart.
words
Very
were certainly
smart.
heavy, but
Very
at the
smart.
same time he couldn't help but feel happy about them. Reason being that this would be the first time his father was showing visible consideration and compassion. It was a side of him he'd honestly never seen before, one that actually looked out for the family. The smile was just the icing on the top, indicating approval towards Jinho already finding a hunter he could trust. By becoming close friends with Sung, Jinho had proved he was capable of finding hunters he could rely on.
That's a good point. Even if he doesn't join the guild, you know Jinwoo even has like said that they're brothers. You know he's gonna look out for him. You know that. That's a good point.
It was a test that finally made clear Jinho could run the Yushin Guild. So, with that being his to run the way he wanted, he would need to find more reliable hunters just like Sung, then turn them into people he could trust in the future. It was all because they would without a doubt become the most valuable assets he would end up having. It didn't matter how much money him or his father had, because the world was clearly leaning towards a new type of currency, one that was dictated by power. Now, this was certainly a happy moment for the both of them, but it wouldn't last long as Jinho had already decided to join another guild. Despite the Yushin Guild already having several S ranks in the final stages of negotiations, and despite it clearly being on the fast track to becoming the best and biggest guild in the entire country,
It has S ranks on the final stage of negotiations? It does? Huh. What S ranks?
Jinho was prepared to forego all of it for Sung. It was a decision his father was incredibly disappointed by.
Okay, so there we go.
Nevertheless, Jinho
Okay.
was still happy since this was the decision he wanted to make.
I was curious because it sounded like the anime made a complete 180 on the decisions, you know? Like changed everything, but it didn't change everything.
He had
Alright,
no
I see.
regrets making it whatsoever. Such a decision did come with significant consequences though, because unlike how the anime states Jinho left on his own accord, his father had actually kicked him out and cancelled all his bank accounts. It's not like he lived with his parents, but the apartment he did live in was owned by his father. So Mr. Yu took away Jinho's house as well as all the money he had access to. This leads to a completely different reaction from Jinho here, because where in the anime he shows up at Sung's place all happy and determined, in the manhwa and novel he was actually crying. I know I'm skipping past a lot of cut content from in between these scenes, but I just want to make the whole Jinho storyline as coherent as possible.
Okay.
So Jinho would show up to Sung's asking for a place to stay, only to get the door shut in his face before he could even finish. Sung had zero intent of letting Jinho stay in the same house as his sister, instead forcing him to go and find a motel.
That's
this
funny.
would be until he could find some office space for his own guild, but there was very little compassion from Sung in the manhwa and novel. None of this brotherly love like how we saw in the anime. In fact, Sung wouldn't even tell Jinho who it was when she asked. He instead opted to call Jinho a stranger he'd never met.
That's kind of funny, because in, like, the way it's been described, it's kind of like he's like, I ain't letting this dude in the house with my sister. Have you seen my sister? She crazy. She crazy. I can't let this guy in the house with my sister. You know? He's just a big bro looking out for his sister, you know? Or looking out for his bro. Either way, he looking out for somebody.
Met before. He insisted he was just some random person
Random crazy guy,
address. So, I couldn't tell
in
you
the
why
book,
myself,
did they say
but
they were
for
brothers
some
as
reason,
well?
Sung really wanted to hide his association to him. It's for that reason why I think the anime presents this scene a little bit better, since shutting out Jinho doesn't really seem like something Sung would do here.
Yeah,
the
I
man
agree.
literally just gave up a multi-billion-dollar business opportunity. The least Sung could do in return is provide him a place to stay.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially after all that talk about being brothers at the restaurant.
I agree. It would have been really odd if they had, like, that restaurant talk, which, again, the AniNews is about to go into, and everything like that, and then he turns up and he's crying and sad, and he's at the door, and he's like, please let me have a place to stay, and just slams the door in front of his face, you know? He's like, fuck you, bye. I don't know who this guy is. That would have, I'm not even joking, that would have actually, like, made me look at Jinwoo a little bit differently, because that would have been, like, the ultimate asshole move. Like, this person who is supposed to be very close to, outside of his family, this is supposed to be the person he's closest to, you know? He even called him his brother. So it would have been very, like, dick. And it, like, I'm not saying that, like, Sung Jinwoo doesn't have moments like that, but this would have been on another level.
Provide him a place to stay. Especially after all that talk about being brothers at the restaurant here.
Yeah, I agree.
Now,
the anime did a
when
good
the
job
story
with this.
goes back to Jinho's father later, despite his wife suggesting he was being a bit too harsh, Mr. Yu fully agreed every choice had responsibilities and consequences. That being the case, this was just the result of Jinho's choice. As frustrated as Mr. Yu seemed though, his wife wasn't so sure he was actually angry. Reason being that, despite all the talk, his expression still looked as if he was pleased in some way. Yes, he was upset since Jinho rebelled against him, but at the same time he wasn't unhappy. No. He couldn't help but be a little content with the way Jinho showed conviction towards something he was passionate about. So, really, Mr. Yu was only upset at Jinho saying no to him because the lifestyle he built was no different than the one he had in his business. To him, orders were meant to be followed, and for anyone to say no to them, well, that was unacceptable. That being the case, his reaction to Jinho was essentially the equivalent of him firing an employee. It was just the natural way to respond for him. The reaction of someone who treated his family the same way he treated a business. It was then that the first symptoms of the eternal slumber would take effect, but rather than talk about that now, I'm gonna save that, the rest of the press conference, Specs sleuthing, the auction house, and the dungeon for another video. If I continued talking about the cut content from all that, then this video would be 40 minutes and I wouldn't be finished until Saturday. So expect a part 2 to this episode likely on Friday or Saturday. I do hope.
We're getting a part 2. Oh. Also, what was something I wanted to say? Something just, like, occurred to me all of a sudden. Oh yeah, the eternal slumber. Is that the same thing? Because when I was doing my reaction to episode 7, I said we could see some sort of conflict. Like, if Jinwoo gets hold of this elixir of life, you know, is it a one-time use thing? And it seems interesting that, like, if the eternal slumber is the same thing, I don't remember what his mum suffers with, but I'm guessing it's the eternal slumber, which now makes more sense because we know it's affected when someone's, like, around hunters for, like, a period of long time, or who has, like, a low magic tolerance, which would make sense for why his mother would have it, right? So if that's what his mother has and he gets the elixir of life, then isn't that going to mean that he's going to be close to someone who also has someone who could use that? You know what I'm saying? And is it a one-time use thing? See what I'm saying?
All that, then this video would be 40 minutes and I wouldn't be finished until Saturday. So expect a part 2 to this episode likely on Friday or Saturday. I do hope you enjoyed this one though, as there was certainly quite a lot to talk about. It might not be focused on Sung, but these scenes definitely serve to develop the world around him. So let me know what you thought down in the comments, and if you liked the video then consider leaving a like and subscribing.
Go subscribe to AniNews. Go subscribe to AniNews. I knew it. I knew this was going to be a big one. You can always tell. The episodes where there is a lot of dialogue are the episodes usually when there's a lot of stuff left out. So the fact that this was a big one, and we're getting big enough to get you part 2, is kind of exciting. Because there was a lot that happened in this. I always see, like, because I follow, like, a few other anime reactors on, like, Twitter and stuff like that. And I find it funny when I look at, like, how they talk about these episodes. Very different to how I talk about them. And I'm not throwing any shade at all for people like, oh, Jesus. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm trying to say is, I'm not one of these people that's action obsessed. Despite what I said at the beginning of this video where I was saying Solo Leveling obviously is very action focused. And like that is the like I would definitely say that's like one of my main reasons for falling in love with this anime as I have done. I feel like those epic moments are just so damn captivating, you know, with these fantastic OSTs by Hiroyuki Sawano, which swell the moments. They're very emotionally well like deepened. And whenever they happen, there's like such a fantastic build up to them. Everything feels good. Everything fits nicely, you know? It's hard not to love these scenes. So the action scenes are definitely, like I said, a reason why I really love this anime. But I love the world. I love the story. I love Jinwoo. I love like the concept behind Solo Leveling and how it's been presented. And I really enjoy all of that too. So what I'm trying to say is I find it interesting that a lot of people who do reactions to this series will say that these episodes aren't good. They'll be completely single-minded and obsessed with just the fighting episodes. And they'll go, every fighting episode is amazing, but every episode when there isn't fighting is pants. And I find that kind of sad, because I think these episodes are just as good, if done right, as the fighting episodes for different reasons, you know? It's the same reason that a lot of us, I'm assuming a lot of you guys watching this, don't just solely watch one genre of movie, you know? I doubt every single person watching this only watches action, only watches horror movies, you know, only watches the same kind of thing for anime, you know? I imagine all of us have completely different tastes in different things and watch and consume a bunch of, like, different genre content. And it's the same when watching something like this, you know? You can like and appreciate all parts of it, but it has to be done at a good point, like, it has to be done well. And I do feel like Solo Leveling Season 2 is doing a better job than Season 1 did at conveying these down moments better. I feel like in Season 1, it almost felt like the down moments didn't really give us that much information. They were very vague and very empty, and the episodes were quite slow-paced. And I agree with that with Season 1. I don't feel like that with Season 2 at all. I feel like the down moments are brilliantly well done. I feel like they flow really nicely. Half the time, they're not like paced anywhere near they were like Season 1. And I feel like they give us a lot of information that's valuable, and they keep us hungry, you know? I really feel like Season 2 has fleshed out a lot of, like, the slower moments of Season 1, and somehow managed to keep those down times, give us all that, like, that information we need, and still make it flow and pace it very nicely. So, yeah. I'm excited to see part 2, man. I really love these videos. I do. I think AniNews does an awesome job. As someone who I'm surprised with how much I am actually loving Solo Leveling, because I am loving this anime so much. I'm like, it's been really fun watching AniNews' videos. Yeah, I've never done this before with an anime. This is a first for me, but I'm having a good time doing it. Anyway, if you enjoy my reaction, like, subscribe, have an awesome freaking day. That's about it from me, my friends. And as always, you will see me in the next video.